Thank you everyone for being This webinar is being recorded, so you will be able to access it after the fact. It will be sent to you. We are also doing an in-person version of this, of similar topic in New York on November 9th. So if you're interested, the registration will also be in our follow-up email. But thank you everyone again for joining. Today we're going to be talking about revolutionizing the finance industry, so unleashing the power of digital transformation. We have James and Erika with us today. We are extremely lucky to have them, and I will pass it over to them to introduce themselves, and then we can go ahead and get started.
I'll go first. Hi, everyone. I'm Erika Whitestone. I'm part of the Dynamic Yield team, as you can see my background. I've been a part of the Dynamic Yield team for over 4 years, supporting our customer success organization, specifically focusing on our financial services customers. But I've been in the A/B testing and personalization space for over 8 years, diving much more deeply into financial services in the last couple of years. So I'm really excited to get to share with you why I think personalization and digital transformation, there's such an amazing opportunity ahead for financial services and banks. And I'll pass to James.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm James. I don't have a fancy background, but I do have my Fundingcircle mug here, repping the brand. I am head of digital at Fundingcircle. I've been in digital for about 10 years, just over a decade now, looking after everything from paid search, paid social, all the kind of acquisition channels, all the way through to own channels, so website, analytics, optimization, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of my background.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for being here. So I want to kind of kick off the discussion, starting with James, although Erika, I'd love to get your view on this as well. James, can you share some insights on how digital transformation has reshaped the landscape of the banking industry, and specifically how Fundingcircle has been responding to it?
Sure, yeah. So for those that don't know anything about Fundingcircle, Fundingcircle was born from the financial crisis in 2008. It's very much a digital platform. It's a small business lending platform. So effectively we find, well, the initial idea from the founders was that small businesses in the UK were having a raw deal from traditional high street banks. That's seen as a very underserved market, not very attractive compared to sort of big corporates. So they built a platform effectively which matched investor funding to power small businesses in the UK. So digital was at the heart of everything we do. Every single piece of interaction has to go through the website to make an application, to get in touch with us, anything like that. So I think we're very much part of the wave of banks disrupting high street lenders and all that kind of stuff. More specifically for what that means for Fundingcircle is that we used digital transformation to build proprietary risk models to understand performance of small businesses much better than a high street bank could, so that we can give you a better rate. It allows us to give you much better customer experience and sort of tailored and personalized experiences. So yeah, I think we've been at the forefront of that, alongside your sort of retail banks like Monzo and Revolut and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. And at the end there, you touched a little bit on the kind of end user experience from personalization perspective. So Erika, would love your view on that lens of how digital transformation has been reshaping the banking industry.
Totally. And I think what really perked my ears as well was that James talked a lot about customer experience. And I think that has been the core over the last 10 plus years. And many industries, not just financial services, have come to understand that enhancing the customer experience means that you're able to win those customers. And so we at Dynamic Yield define personalization as taking every customer interaction and building that moment to meet that individual's needs and build a lasting relationship. And this has been super, super important, right? I touched on other industries. Customers have come to expect, and many industries have been disrupted over the last couple of years, right? We look at Blockbuster and now Netflix. We look at Borders and now Amazon. Those disruptions through technology, through what I would say digital transformation, has allowed winners to come through and meet customers where they are. And these customers are now starting to expect that in every sort of digital engagement that they have. And so we've seen that financial institutions has not yet matured enough in that way to be able to support personalization just yet. And I think we're just now on the precipice of the FIs are starting to see the value, and the customers are there and they're expecting that because they're experiencing it in every other digital interaction or even physical interaction that they're having. So I think that that's really where, the future of FI and the future of this industry is going.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's really interesting how customer expectations of the banking world are no longer but the expectations of, a bank isn't competing against other banks, they're competing against the last best experience one of their customers may have had, even if it was outside the financial services world.
And one other point to add to that, Emma, is also that I read this stat the other day, the average US, UK, and Australian bank consumer on average is working with between 4 and 7 different financial institutions. So we're no longer at the point in time where you can expect that your consumer is only talking to you. So in order to elevate that experience, you need to make your experiences stand out with that consumer.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of actually doing that more tactically, in the context of banking, James, I would love to talk a little bit about the tech stack. So specifically thinking about composable, how does having a composable tech stack contribute to achieving some of the rapid digital transformation that you talked about Fundingcircle was really able to embrace early on, and using that to adapt to those market dynamics that Erika just mentioned?
Yeah, so I think Eric and I are really going to agree on lots of things, hopefully, around customer experience. The customer experience is everything. And if you think about composable being the way to drive that, I've kind of broken it down into 3 things, but the core, I guess, guiding thing through all of them is customer experience to power better customer experiences. So the first one is around flexibility. So using composable stacks makes us incredibly flexible. It allows us to build components, microservices that can be easily integrated and swapped out. Obviously, we like to think it's a lot easier said than done, but at the root of it, it's basically allowing us to be incredibly flexible. The second thing is around faster time to market. So speed to market is obviously crucial in all industries. In ours, it's obviously very, very, very important. First mover advantage. And composable tools allow us to make us fast and fairly painless to spin up these new tools. Finally, it's all around scalability, right? So when combined with tools like CDPs, like Segment, we can start to orchestrate really cool, low touch, automated, segmented journeys at scale. And we haven't been able to do that before. So these are things that really power fun, interesting things for customers to keep coming back and delivering value to make people happy and have a good customer experience.
Yeah, while also giving you the flexibility to design your tech stack as it meets your needs as a business and organization as well. So Erika, from your perspective, what specific advantages do you think, in going back to this idea of the customer experience, what specific advantages do you think personalization can offer to banks and financial institutions that may not be as readily available to other industries?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things. I think first off, because it's newer to the industry as a whole, those financial institutions that do decide to invest are going to be ahead of the curve and going to be able to create, even with just minor changes to their experience, are going to be able to create an elevated experience for the consumer. And talking about that point before, they're going to be the ones that stand out between the 4 to 7 banks that the customer is using. Additionally, what's really unique, personalization has matured in a lot of industries. Specifically, there's been a lot of maturing in the retail and e-commerce space. They were one of the first ones to really grasp it. I think Amazon led the way in a lot of that. Those industries typically don't have the plethora of data that financial institutions have. So think about it. When you go to look at your bank, what is the first thing you do? You sign into your account because you already have an account, and that's where any behavior of value utility is going to happen for the consumer. Take Another, retailer, for example, they're browsing anonymously. They have no idea who that person is. And of course, there's ways that that industry has figured out, but financial institutions have the benefit that that first action is the sign in. So we know who you are. We know what you're spending on. We know what you're doing. And we can use that data pairing with dynamic yield and MasterCard, all these other, these cool models and things we can do on top of that. But even on your own, your customer and what they're interested in. So we can start to talk to them differently than we would talk to someone who's just landing on a page and we have absolutely no idea. And what that allows for is to bring that human, that personal touch with the customer and make them really feel like they're having a conversation and a dialogue and building a relationship with the bank, as opposed to being like yelled at, or maybe not yelled at, but like being talked at, and
Yeah.
not experiencing that kind of that relationship part that I think is so crucial to building trust with a consumer and a financial services institution.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think a really important point there is that it's not just that, the banks are sitting on all this data, but it's the consumer actively consented to give the bank that data. So they know that they have that information. They're comfortable with that because they already trust the institution. So there's so much you can do with it, where if another industry were leveraging,
Yeah, not
they may
surprising.
exactly. It's not a
Or
surprise. They
creepy
feel
or
comfortable.
totally.
Exactly, which I just think is really important. So speaking about, if we think of personalization as just one tool in the toolkit, so to speak, in terms of an overall composable tech stack, to enhance the customer experience, with digital, James, you already shared a couple examples, but would be curious to have any more concrete examples of how Funding Circle has leveraged the composable tech stack approach to innovate and enhance the customer experience.
Yeah, so I think I kind of mentioned that we're at our journey start with Segment as a CDP to start orchestrating these experiences. But a lot of what we've done this year is we've onboarded a new tool. I'm assuming everyone hates GA4 now, so we've got rid of GA4 and we moved on to Amplitude. And we kind of see Amplitude, Optimizely, and Contentstack as this flywheel of tools that we use to power one another. So learning about the customer, creating experiences for the customer, and testing on the customer. And using something like Segment, we are able to start thinking about customers, not just customers who are logged in, as Erika said, which is obviously amazing, but also anonymous customers as well. So on-site behavior, what have they done? What are they clicking on? Dynamic sort of content on page. This is not anything new. We're just stealing stuff from retail. They've done this for years, but we just need to do it in financial services quite a lot better. So yeah, that's kind of where we're going. We've seen some really good results from more tailored, personalized landing pages and journeys from those sort of ad campaigns. So yeah, it's definitely the way that we're moving over the next 18 months, 24 months or so.
And that really kind of lends itself well to a discussion about the future and, where, not just Funding Circle is going, but where we think the industry is going as a whole. So Erika, I would love to hear your perspective on kind of future trends and what opportunities there are for digital transformation within the banking sector. And also, how can financial institutions prepare for those changes?
Mm-hmm. So starting with the future trends, I think that there are a couple of core trends that are going to help banks elevate and create a superior customer experience. The first would be removing friction and helping to elevate so that things are easy and simple to do. The second would be focusing on value and not products. I think historically, it's been really easy to look at all of the products that you have up your sleeve and just showcase them to a consumer and not instead talk about what the value is around those products, and potentially a combination of those different value and services is going to be the thing. They don't usually end up caring that it was a CD or it was a bank account. It's like, how is that going to help me with my goal of securing my money or loaning money or getting a mortgage, right? And then the last but I think the most important is the personalizing the engagement, which we've been talking about. The creating that relationship with the consumer, speaking to them in real time where they are and helping to meet them with their needs. And so how this is going to relate into how financial institutions can start to prepare for this is, one, they can start to invest in, and I mean that in a couple of different ways, right? You've got to be able to have the technology to be able to support that. you also need to be able to have the teams in place who can execute on that. And I think most importantly, you need to believe in the idea and, believe in customer centricity. So, and build an organization that's focused on that, because personalization and creating a better customer experience is not just a one team kind of thing. What it means is that you need to be affecting all different points internally so that externally you're creating that one cohesive experience and you're combining your data, right? I'm sure you have data here, there, and the other place. Like, how can all of those pieces speak together, right? So that we're able to show the customer that we understand where they are and that we're able to then deliver. And this is also going to take some testing. We're going to have some ideas and we're going to see what works and what doesn't. And that's part of the fun. That's part of what my team and my job is to say, here's our hypothesis that if we change the experience and personalize it in this way, that it's going to result in XYZ benefit for the consumer. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but we always learn from those different experiences. So I think it's really just because I know I touched on quite a few points. It's really about that friction, the increasing value, and that personalizing the engagement going forward for FIs to really take digital transformation to the next level.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of incredible insights in that response, Erika. Thank you. James, I would love your perspective on this as well. The future trends and opportunities, you kind of touched on that in your last answer as well. But if there's anything you can elaborate on how data-driven strategies from a transformation perspective and personalization perspective can be used by FIs to engage their customers effectively and really build lasting relationships.
Honestly, I think Erika has said pretty much everything, right? It's about customer value and finding out where we can deliver the right message at the right time to the right customer. Rather than shouting and screaming and saying, take this product, it's perhaps more exploratory. It's about developing predictive analytics to help customers, right? And find what they need on your site rather than just forcing them into certain things. There's certain things that I've also been thinking around like better top of the funnel marketing campaigns using customer segmentation and all this kind of stuff, like in AdWords or Facebook and all this kind of stuff. So not that like directly related to composable, but the outcome would be using the composable architecture. So I think Erika said it best.
Amazing.
No, you added a lot of good, sorry, Emma, but James, you added a lot of good content. And I also think like that segmentation and audience piece is so important, right? So something else that the folks listening on the line can also start to think about is, right, what are those core segments for you? And I would always say, we have a lot of content on the Dynamic Yield website talking about this, but start with something scalable, start with something macro, like who are your core segmentation? What are your 3 to 4 main audiences that you would want to create separate experiences? And that's at least a good way internally to start thinking about those customers differently and start to ideate across those different channels, what kinds of messages you would want to put in front of them.
It helps. We've done that exact practice and we've done it through sort of the value that they bring to us as a firm. So we look at risk banding. So if they're a good company asking for a lot of money, then we want to give them this type of experience, whatever. So I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's a really good way to really start to understand what different segments are actually using your site and how to give them what they actually need.
Yeah, and I think, so many of these topics can feel really overwhelming, even not just for the financial services industry, but really any industry getting started here. There are so many things you can do. There is so much powerful technology, but it's really about how are you equipped to use it and scale the program. So starting with smaller like value segment audiences or whatever segmentation principle makes the most sense for your business is a way to really pare that down and focus on what matters, learn and iterate, and then expand from there. And I think keeping that in mind at the start of any program, or even if you're redoing your program, is so crucial to actually doing this effectively.
Totally. Emma and I have talked at length about the crawl, walk, run model of personalization. It's about getting those small wins. And when James was talking about composable, that also it took me in a little bit of a different direction with my background, but thinking about your website, right, and those environments kind of as composable, right? What are the different areas of the app, the web that you want to like continue to reuse and reuse? And just take one, like what place would you like to try to change something and have a segmented experience? And you start there, and then over time, and that's what we've seen with our own customers, is you get those small wins, you share them out internally, externally, and then you're able to continue to build and invest more in your own teams and the technology to be able to produce, to get to the end state, which we jumped to earlier, to get to that end state of omni-channel, right? And all these other big words we love to say. It's not immediate, but those small steps are crucial. Those milestones are crucial to you being able to tack away at getting that better customer experience.
I definitely agree with that. I think you mentioned about like big words, and I think personalization, I think sounds so scary because people think it needs to be one-to-one personalized experiences. And if you start there, you'll never get started. So backing all the way up and saying, what do 20% of the people actually need, way better way of doing it. And you get, obviously it's diminishing returns anyway, as you get to a one-to-one anyway. So
exactly. Yeah.
Is how valuable that is.
Yeah.
Well, I am loving the discussion here. I forgot to mention at the beginning that anyone on the line is welcome to ask a few questions if they would like in the chat. But while we wait for any of those to come in, since I didn't quite prompt you with them, I did actually have a couple questions that I was curious to ask, very related to what we were just talking about. So James, for you specifically, and this is something Erika was kind of just touching on, but I'm curious how you have kind of, Fundingcircle obviously has been digital first from the beginning, if that's fair to say. But I'm curious how you have kind of evangelized the work that you're doing, because it seems like a lot of it is more on the cutting edge. How have you kind of got internal or achieved internal buy-in for what you're doing to make sure that you can continue scaling it out and bringing it to that level that we're kind of talking about is the gold standard that we want to achieve?
That's such a good question. So before the pandemic, digital was actually like the digital channels, so like website, paid search, whatever, were kind of a bit of a pariah. We actually used a lot of direct mail as the force behind Fundingcircle, which seems a bit weird as a digital platform to send letters and all this kind of stuff. But throughout the pandemic and post COVID, things have really, really changed. But we've noticed the behavior of people searching and interacting with stuff online just exploded, right? So this has helped with Google's things like PMax or Facebook, Meta, doing all the crazy things that Meta are doing to help us target customers better through content and all this kind of stuff. So it's probably not that helpful to say, but just great results really help sell this kind of stuff. And by great results, I think one of the things that we've really found is having a fairly mature CRO experimentation program as well through Optimizely, having good results there, showing that there is power behind testing on users, giving them different experiences, shouting about it to high heaven, just keep on repeating it, that these are having really big changes, big swings for conversion rates. And then even things like customer focus groups, like actually understanding, again, listening to the customer and understanding what differences we've made, what are we not doing well, things like little tools like Hotjar, which we use, cheap and cheerful, get the feedback tool, understand where we're going wrong. Those kind of things are just invaluable to a marketer, right? You want to understand what's in people's heads, even if it's bad. Probably better if it's bad, just to tell me what's going on.
Yeah, that's something we talk about a lot actually at Dynamic Yield, is that like a bad test result could actually be a blessing in disguise because you're understanding what's not working and can fix it. Erika, I'm kind of curious to pose the question back to you, but from the perspective of the fact that you work with a bunch of FI clients on their personalization and testing program. So I'm curious what you've done or what you've seen worked with them to help them. Let's say you are seeing great results. What are some things that you've been able to either observe that the clients that you work with are doing to really evangelize these and push them forward, or that you yourself maybe have, used to help them spread that message?
Yeah. So as I was mentioning before, they typically start in that crawl, walk, run. So they'll pick one environment or one specific challenge that they're really focused on. And that may be like focusing on acquisition for a specific product, right? And so we start to come up with a couple of ideas and we start to get those small wins. And then what's really crucial is developing that messaging to share with the rest of the organization. Usually financial institution organizations are so large and there's so much going on that sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, right? And so being able to package up those learnings in a cohesive way to share across the team. And that can be, a monthly newsletter that you're doing internally to say, this is what we've learned and these are the results that we've had, from those different personalization tests, as well as some of our more mature clients also run quarterly internal business reviews where they're going through all of their different test results and environments, because it does end up being really, really valuable to have those key customer learnings and insights for other parts of the organization that can impact what you're doing in email, what kinds of push messages you're sending, what your social media, online says, and how that relates to when they're touching one of your owned environments.
Yeah, absolutely. We did get a question from the chat, so I would love to ask that as well. I'll get kind of both of your perspectives here. I'll read it aloud to you. So the question is around, is one-to-one personalization the norm now as a gold standard, or is it something you're working towards as a beacon? So I think keyword being the one-to-one. Kind of some more context, some marketing departments see this really as the gold standard, while their engineering departments see it as potentially a nightmare because of the complexity, which is definitely fair. And composable, I do think, ties into this a little. But James, starting with you, would love your take on that.
I personally, in my world, I don't see one-to-one personalization happening, at least on the anonymous browsers. I don't understand how you would get to that. Logged in experiences, perhaps, maybe. I think there's a place for it, but then also you come into this kind of uncanny valley thing where people think them too well. Like, how are you giving me these amazingly personalized results? So yeah, I think it's a really good question. I don't know. I think it's probably a scale. Probably I am more on the segmentation side of things rather than the personalization side of things. I think there's way more value on this side. I think it's diminishing returns as you go up that. But obviously, if you can give right message at the right time, if you know stuff about them, as kind of Erika was saying, then I think customer experience right over and above.
Yeah, totally. And James, I totally agree with you. I think you want to think about the diminishing returns. And I think there's different pieces and tools under your belt that can help with both sides of this coin, right? So having that approach of larger audience buckets is a lot more scalable. You're able to learn more about those segments. You're able to drive towards your goals much faster and have impactful results. I think about if you're only testing or changing an experience for 10 people versus 10,000, right? You're able to actually see the monetary gain from that. But at the same time, with technology growing, there is the ability for the one-to-one. I think when we think about our AI, deep learnings, algorithmically, so it's how do we pair both of those things together? So there's a time and place for each one of those things. So how do we do large scale messages? You're not going to have an individual image for every single user who hits your site. You don't want to be in that game. Your marketing team will not be able to scale it. Amazon marketing, she knows the things they'll ask her to do, right? That's also not really beneficial. But on the other side, when we look at things like the products that you're offering, the content that you're serving, maybe there are offers, those are things that could be scalable in a one-to-one way. And we at Dynamic Yield refer to this as your own data feed and have different algorithms that can then serve up and match automatically. So there isn't one person deciding that this person should see XYZ. So it's how do we marry that? And I do think over time, the technology is going to get better and better, but we're going to have to figure out what the time and place is. And that's where the marketer, so the folks, listening to this webinar, I think mostly that's where you all come in. There's still that brain power that we're going to need. I think about AI and ChatGPT and all that stuff. We're still always going to need a human behind there to help direct the technology. So I think that that's more and more what those jobs are going to become of. So how do we direct and harness and power this technology to use both the one-to-one and to use the scalable personalization in the place that it makes the most sense and is most beneficial for the customer and most beneficial for the business.
Wow, mic drop, Erika.
Thank you.
Amazing. Oh, did another question come in? Oh, no, we have answered that. Okay, amazing. Well, if there are no other questions, I think that was an incredible discussion. James and Erika, do you have anything else you would like to add or leave the audience with before we wrap up?
Not on the
If-
top of my head. Go on, Eric,
If
sorry.
you're interested in learning more, we have a ton of content available at the Dynamic Yield website. So we have articles specifically focused on financial institutions. So feel free to check that out there.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mentioned, well, if anyone is going to be in the New York area in early November, we will have an in-person Contentstack and Dynamic Yield event talking about similar topics. So would love to continue the discussion with all of you there. We'll send the recording out in the follow-up as well as the registration link to that. And thank you everyone for joining. And James and Erika, thank you so much for the discussion. It was great.
Thanks, Emma.